Well, hi there guys. I said a little while ago, I'm not sure how, I forgot actually a couple of things I said I'd do, but one chap asked me to put on, because I said I'd dropped hints at it, I'd learnt some bits and pieces when I was learning to do my freehand grinding, and basically asking me what was that, what were the, the sort of like things I found that have made that easier for me. I think the first thing I'll say is this might be a bit disjointed, so obviously I'll edit the video to put it together. You all know how good I am at that, it's just because I'm in the middle of different things. I'm trying to do different things. Like one of the things I've started trying to do since I've had more time, and over the last few months I've gradually got more and more time to be doing my knife making, and at the minute I'm trying to build a stock up of knives, so I've got enough knives to be able to show people and then start selling. So that's what I'm doing at the minute. So I'm not really, I've just finished one and I've got a couple of commissions that I'm having to do, but other than that I'm just trying to knuckle down and get a variety of the things that I do like to make, so I've got something to show. So that's why when you see the grinding, that's why it's all different things. I'm just trying to get a little collection of stuff together. Now that in itself makes it more difficult, because I can't just do one, I'll split them up, but instead of doing say 4 neck knives or 4 hunting, it's a bit mixed, so it might look a bit strange, and if you wonder why, that's the reason I'm doing that. The other thing is I'm not exactly sure how to put this across, but anyway we will see. So what I'm doing at the minute is I've actually got, put the thing over there, I've got actually for me a couple of batches of knives that I'm actually getting all ground out and everything, trying to get ready for heat treat. So although I've got some here, which these are actually just ready, I've got a couple of Pucos and a hunting knife here, which these need the blades taping before I start doing anything else with the handles. The reason I didn't tape these blades, normally I do it before I put the handle on, but the reason I didn't tape these is I've just had a week away down in the South Island, hunting and camping, and I didn't want to leave tape on the blades, because just any by chance I might have got to drop a touch of damp on there, even though I do oil them, but because just a touch of damp could have actually, rusted them up. So basically I was really careful and just to glue the scales on, whereas normally, like I say, I would have taped the blades, but I took a lot of care and time just to clamp these up, so these came out just before I went away, and then I could oil the blades and then just leave them. So that's why there's no tape on, but normally I'd tape them before I glued the handles up. But when I got back, I thought, well, rather than just cracking on with them, and I did the leather work before I went, I thought, well, the problem is the next batch I get going on, I've got downtime with my oven and stuff, so I'm struggling with getting, and obviously because I'm trying to do this a bit more professionally, I'm struggling with having downtime. So if I put a set of knives in the kiln, what do I do then? So I'm trying to make sure I've always got work and jobs to be doing. I think I might have overdone it this time. I think I've jumped in, I've got about 8 blades on the go over there, which I'm getting to the point where I'm ready for the heat treat. I should maybe just stuck to 4 and just maybe, I don't know, I'm trying to get some sort of system together, and I'm struggling. But anyway, with that, that's something else to think about. Another side of things, how do you keep a consistent production going? Because at the end of the day, I can only probably make about 4 knives a week or something, and then unfortunately the market I can aim at the minute, which I'm trying to get my name out there, is not the super duper mega hand finished things that I can spend days and days and days doing. I don't think anyway, but we'll see. So it's just trying to keep that batches going, so then I don't have a day where I just don't do anything but the heat treat, or like when you get a set of knives handles done and then they go in the linseed oil. Oh, where's it gone? There we are, linseed oil. It goes in the linseed oil for 24 hours. So what do I do then for 24 hours? So yeah, it's things like that I'm sort of like rambling with. So I'll just take you over here now and just try and give you a few hints and tips that I've picked up, and then this might be a bit disjointed as well. But the first thing I like to do, although I've seen a lot of others do it the other way, this belt's nearly knackered, but it's only from taking edges off, is I've seen a lot of guys leave the rest on here and grind on the rest. The reason I don't, the reason I've taken that off, is it just lets me, depending on the size of the knife, it lets me move my arms around a little bit. I've got a little bit more freedom. I'm not, restricted with that. And also, when you are grinding, if you're doing a lot of hot grinding, there's a lot of spark to come back up off of that. And I like to do barehanded. I don't like to grind with gloves on. I know people say it can be dangerous, things can get caught. Mine's more for the fact that even if I'm doing the grinding pre-heat treat, I try not to let the blades get hot, then you're reducing the stress going into the steel. So that's why, you know, that's two things. One, it stops the sparks coming back at me, lets everything just go into the slot bucket, and it gives me a bit more freedom to move around. Now, what I've done up to press, I mean, I've got a couple of different thicknesses. Oh, that's enough to show. Now, one thing, when you're doing the preheat treat, any preheat treatment, preheat treat grinding, don't get really het up about getting something perfect. You just want it reasonably flat. And the reason for that is I only actually take off maybe at the maximum sort of half to 2/3, somewhere between half and 2/3 of what I'm going to actually finish the grinding at. That's all I take off. I'm just taking some of the meat off. And to be honest, the main reason for that is it saves a bloody lot of money on belts. You know, trying to grind hardened steel is bloody hard on belts. And it takes a lot longer as well. But, like I say, because I'm only trying to get half to 2/3 on there, it just makes life a little bit easier as long as you don't get too pedantic. Now, if I can show this, hopefully you can see. Now, what I did, the top part, where you can see that little top grind, basically the first thing I do is I go to 45 degrees and I just grind that almost down and leave about 1 mil in the middle. So that's just the corner, I'm taking just the corners off because it's those corners that really rip your belt to bits. And I've found, I mean, obviously there's other guys say this on YouTube, so I thought, oh, whoops, does it? Oh, I caught it. Good job, it wasn't sharp. And it does, I've tried it. You know, really, you go straight to a corner, especially a hard corner, and you can just feel it ripping the grit off. Whereas if you've got an old belt that's a bit worn, you can just take that 45-degree angle down. Now, what I do is I'll stand here, and if you can actually see where my body is here, how close I am, I've got a light here. There we go, I didn't put that in to affect the picture. And basically I get my head, we can see my body here, and my head is actually here. This is why I haven't got the grinder on. My head is literally right over the top, so I'm looking straight down here, literally straight down the platen here. So I can see what I'm doing, and it gives me a really good view. Now, the first thing I did, I spent a bit of time, and I can show you on a smaller one, which I haven't taken any further. Right. Now, this is a good time to start practicing your feel and actually looking. So what you're doing is you're actually just gently putting it up to the platen, and then just move it until you can't see any shadow at the back. If you tip it a bit forward, you'll see a bit of shadow. That means you're riding on the edge, not on the flat that you've already ground. And it's just getting rid of that bit of shadow, and that'll give you that. And then just learn to just do that and try. So, and you just learn to feel, and it's a learned thing. You can't. Well, some people might just hear it and do it. I couldn't. You start to feel. It's almost like if anybody grinds sharpens a Scandi blade. When you put it on, you can feel it flat. You feel that flat hip. So you pick your first one and get that on. Then after that, what you're looking for is no gap down here. As long as you've got no gap and you can't see any shadow at the back. And then you can just start to sort of like feel it. And yes, your fingers are pretty damn close to those grinders. And yes, luckily it grows back. And so that. But then what I try and do, and I can show you on this side because I've got blue on, is I take, you know, just take that bit of time. And although there's probably 4 or 5 passes, maybe 4 because this belt is pretty worn, on there I think you can actually see I've got quite a nice consistent grind. And this is very small, but it's exactly the same process as going for a bigger grind. So you get that bit of practice, just take your time. And what I did, I took my time and practicing all the ones I've done over here. As you can see, there's another one here. And I go to try and get that first 45 degree when I'm taking them corners. Instead of just whacking them off, I use that as almost practice is starting to get the feel, because if you can feel that small bevel, you'll feel a bigger one even easier. And same thing, that's a 2mm blade, so it's much smaller, but it's the same thing. It's trying to get that nice consistent run on it. Yeah. The other one, the first one I showed you, does have some variation on it, but this is one. On this one, I've actually started running the grind higher, then I stopped. It was a cup of tea time, so I stopped. But you can just see, like I say, that top bevel, and then I've started running a bit of the steel off. So I think this one's probably going to come down to about here, but I'll just take some of the thick steel off before heat, and then clean it up before heat treat. So what you've done is, once you've got to this point, so you can actually see you've got a nice bit of a bevel, and get a few knives, get a few old scraps of steel or whatever, until when you're actually just taking that 45-degree corner off, you're getting a nice finish. That's your first step. Because then what you're going to do from there is you're going to imagine that the bottom of that, which is the bottom edge there, is the first edge where you started, which would have been like here. And then what you do then is hike up to the belt, and just gently touching the belt as it's running, you sort of like just rock it until you can't see that shadow again down the back, and then just drop it down a little bit and take a spin off, and you'll see where it runs. Now that's what I've started to do on this one, and by being really careful as you're grinding it, and not, whatever you do, don't try and grind down to the edge that you've formed here. I know it's not an edge, it's a millimetre line, but when you grind it, don't try and grind this top line away. As soon as you start to go into this top line, you need it to be flatter. So I can start up here with almost, initially there was no shadow, and then I can drop it. Now it's that little longer, I can actually rock it and feel it when it sits. And even if you have to do that without the machine running, give that a few goes so you can feel it when it sits. So it's almost like I say, it's almost like sharpening a Scandi. You can feel it, and then you'll start to learn to feel when it's flat on there. And that means what you're doing is, as you're actually drawing the blade along, that you need your thumb, wherever your thumb is, that's where you're going to take most of the meat off. So you've got to keep that thumb in the middle of that platen and bring it round. And then that's basically, once you can find that, you can actually twiddle it around. But don't get too close to that edge, that's what will ruin it. You can always grind it a little bit higher than you planned, or a little bit less than you planned. That's why it's handmade. You know, it doesn't have to be to the millimetre on every knife you grind. I just know I want to go about halfway with this one, so I'll take it 3/4 to halfway doing this before the heat treat. That gives me a lot more leeway for doing this, and even you can see here, I'm getting a bit carried away. That's what I was hungry, I needed a cup of tea. But you must, any little bits like this that you do once it's been heat treated will be much less. It's easier to control. And what you'll find is, the longer that bevel gets, then, if you just take your time to start with, the longer that bevel gets, the easier it is to find. And you'll find it on here, and then what you start to see is you will actually see a shadow on the back of the knife on the platen there. I hope this is showing up, but you will actually see a shadow between the knife and the platen. And you can then sort of like remember it, and then what you're actually doing is trying to keep that shadow the same all the time as you're drawing the knife along. Yeah? So you'll actually be drawing the knife and keeping that shadow the same, and that's what will help to keep your grind lines straight. So it's visual and feel. You've got both the visual of seeing that gap and the feel. And as long as you don't go too far into this first line here, you're leaving plenty of meat on the blade for the heat treat, and plenty of leeway then for finishing it off. Because once I get this to sort of like 3/4 of the way where I want it to go, then I won't be grinding any further that way. I'll just be keeping it flat, and that's what will then eat into the top edge and start putting my edge in there. So don't do too much. Don't try and do too much before you heat treat. That's a good one. That's a good tip. So I will pop this on and I'll have a quick run, and then show you what I'm talking about. Before I actually put my mask on, this is a good thing to keep old belts for. Now they take a bit longer. This one is nearly done. I can see I'm virtually seeing shiny all the way across. It's just about dead is this belt. But whatever you do, don't be panicking and worrying about getting perfectly straight lines and perfectly flat grinds when you're using an old belt. When it comes to finishing, I'll put a really good, after the heat treat, I'll put a good belt on. It might be a new one, it might not, but it'll be a good one, like a good maybe 60 grit, and just take off. So I'm probably about 80 to 90% finished of where I want. Then I swap to a new 120, and it's that new 120 that will give you the good lines. And it's true, I know a lot of guys on the internet have said, on YouTube, so I say, oh, you've got to have a new belt. You do. For that last part of it, you need a new belt. You don't need a new belt for this part of it, because it doesn't have to be perfect, because I'm not going to take this to where I want it to finish. and then when I want to finally finish it, that's when you need your new belt. So then you can get your newer belt, and you can start using your newer belt. Now the guideline for me, and what I do, because I don't have an unlimited supply. I buy everything I've got. I've said before, I don't get anything for anything I do unless I sell what I make. But I class a belt as new as long as I'm getting a nice, clean, crisp grind line, whether that's anywhere along the bevel or the plunges or whatever. As soon as I start to struggle to get that, to keep that flat, that's when that belt then goes to the used pile. And then from the used pile it goes to the nearly dead pile. The nearly dead pile I'll use for taking the corners off. The used pile is for taking it further down, and then obviously the newer ones are for finishing off. So here we go. Excuse me while I set my bits and bobs up. Right. Now, basically what I've done here, as you can see, is I've taken that up now, although I actually want to go a good probably 4 or 5, maybe 5 mil higher. I won't take this any higher now. I'm leaving quite a bit of meat in here for the heat treatment. Some do, some don't. It's just I go, when you've got some guys talking about not grinding pre-heat treat, and some do and some don't, they all turn out bloody good knives. So I go in the middle. But as you can see, basically this is what I've been talking about here. So I've still got that little edge. I haven't gone into that edge at the top. That's what I'll be working to move out next time. So how far further down it goes will probably depend on how much meat I've got to take out to get this edge now to the centre. That's what you've got to remember. You've got to leave a bit of meat here and not go too far down. If you go too far down now, and then you've got to put that extra angle in to get it right to your centre line, which is up, don't know, to get that centre line out. If I took this to about here now, and then later after heat treat I had to get rid of that centre line, chances are I'm going to end up all the way up here, and it just starts, you just end up chasing things. So, but as you can see, that I'm quite happy with the level of that grind from there. It's consistent, it's reasonably even. I'm surprised how well that belt's done, although you can see different grades, but it's a reasonably consistent line. It gives me somewhere to go to after the heat treat and start on. Obviously I've got to do the other side yet, but that's pretty much what you're aiming for pre-heat treat. So I'll leave that there now, and then what I'll do is after the heat treat, and it's exactly the same process for all the knives. The only slight difference is because I do my scandies on the on my bevel, on my jig I mean, I've got a jig I do my scandies on because I want an exact bevel, is they'll go onto there, but I use exactly the same process. I've taken the corners off, I'll take some of the meat off, then it'll stay at that, finish the heat treat, then come off, and then what I can do is by putting it on the jig, that will just let me finish that and give me that 26-degree bevel. Whereas on here, I will always leave probably, I mean this is quite a meaty knife, this is going to be for a camp knife chopping, but I'll leave about 1/2 mil in that centre because that's where my secondary bevel will go. And the secondary bevel I will put on again probably with my jig because I'll get a bevel on there then, which is what I want. So that's up to there. A few hints and tips there, I hope, about basically how I do that. And I did exactly just what I was saying here, and it's just looking for that amount, looking for the amount of line you've got here, and feeling for that feeling when it's as flat as you can get it on the pattern. and being nice and steady. No big arm movements either. The other thing is, if you see I'm here, and when I'm putting, main pressure is with my thumb, whichever side I'm drawing from, rather than, if you start trying to apply pressure with your pulling hand, you'll tend to do this. So by just keeping that nice and firm with your thumb and pulling that across, that's the way I do it. Now some guys and some people prefer to not use any arm movement, and what they'll do is they'll stand here and then what they pull their bodies across. So this hand stays where it is and they pull it across. So from here there's no body movement. You can see my arm doesn't come away from my side, and what they do is they pull with their body. So wide legs and pull with the body. I tend to find if I concentrate on keeping my thumb hand in for my pressure, and I concentrate on that, and I just use the other hand to pull across. The only time it gets difficult is if you're using a longer knife, and once you're starting to get into the 8-9 inch like a filleter, then I tend to use a bit of both, a bit of body movement as well, because with them being a bit thin and a bit pliable, it's very easy for that to bend and dig in. So I might use a bit of a combination with that. So I'll use, try and keep that a bit more. But that's a couple of different ways, and really you need to experiment with whatever sort of blades it is you're doing. So with that, I will pick up. Well, what you just saw me finishing off there at the end, and a couple of things I was doing, was I was just taking the bevels down to 120. So I cleaned the bevels down to 120 and the flats down as well to either 120, 240, basically so that there's no pressure ridges for the heat treat. Now the thing is, a bit of a tip there is when you're doing that, don't forget, even a 120 belt is pretty aggressive and you're going to rip steel off, especially before you've done your heat treat, so be careful with it. It's very gentle, it's just quite a gentle pressure, just to smooth everything out, just make it look a little bit nicer. Not really going for taking loads and loads of metal off. It'll take plenty of metal off anyway without trying, so, excuse me. But yeah, so, and the two things, the other thing is constantly dipping it in the water, even if it's not hot. What you find is that if you've got, like when you've got your bevel on, when you've got the waters across it and you're grinding across, what you'll find is the centre, you'll see the water boil and evaporate, and wherever the centre of that evaporation is that you're chasing across, that's where your pressure is. So that'll tell you, gives you a good idea and tells you where you're putting your pressure on. So if it's evaporating really quickly from the top, you know you've got a bit of top pressure on. If it's coming from lower down, you've got bottom pressure. So that's a visual indicator of what you're doing. More importantly, when you've done your heat treat, you move on to doing that, and regular dipping, because if you're taking that and you're chasing that evaporation. Hang on, just realised the radio's on. I don't want to be getting done for fees or doing whatever you get done for. I don't bloody know. But yeah, as long as when you've done your heat treat and you're chasing that evaporation across, and never get it beyond that evaporation. So you're literally chasing it, no matter how quick it is. It might be like you could crush your belt literally almost. Doesn't matter. You've chased that evaporation because you know the water evaporates at 100 degrees. Now if you've tempered your knife at about 2, you're well within the range of anything that's ever going to harm the knife. And also I use it as an indicator here, like I say, so I can see what I'm doing. But also, again, it stops from overheating the steel, so the steel from getting hot. What you don't want is indications of heat. So as you can see, nice shiny metal, that's what you're going for. No matter what, whatever you're doing on. Now these were the Scandis, that's why you'll see the table. I know I said I don't want to use a table, but I put the table on so I could rough these out. And then I took them to 120, and then rather than take the belt off because I wasn't really hard grinding, just cleaning up. Actually the table almost helps to steady me a little bit. But then the sort of like the result, okay, these are starting to get wet and rusty already, but as you can see, you know, that I've taken the grind up. Now, a couple of things on this. One is, don't be chasing your bevels and don't be chasing your plunges. Your bevels and your plunges, sorry. Simply because your metal's so soft, you'll be just chasing them and chasing them and chasing them. Just put them roughly where you want them. Don't even worry if they're not completely even. As long as they're fairly close, you know, even a millimetre or something, you clean that off really, really easy after heat treat and much more careful, much more consistently. So that's when you can finish however you want however you want that to go. I just try to round things off a little bit so I've no hard, sharp corners. Because again, they say hard, sharp corners is not good on a heat treat. Slightly longer one. And again, this is more of a general purpose stopper kitchen knife, so I've taken the grind up to here, same thing. Almost a full height hunting knife. And again, as you can see, I've just cleaned. I've not gone completely obsessive. Like I say, even be careful when you stop to the 120 to clean your bevels off. Be careful, you'll just start taking steel off really, really quickly. If I'm reasonably happy with where things are at, for argument's sake, actually this one, I'm quite happy with where things are at with this particular one. After the heat treat, I'll probably go straight to a 120 because there's very little metal to take off that one. One or two, if I start to find that I get a little bit of a wobble somewhere, yeah, this, I've got a bit of a couple of times you might get a little bit of a smiley up the top here, or I've got a little bit of a dig in here. I know it's less than a millimetre off the line, but rather than chasing that, what I would do is I'd stop to the 60, and that just let me have one really nice, clean, firm pass. And that one good, clean, nice, firm pass, not hard, just firm, will be enough to just clean that up. Then you drop to the 120. And a longer one, that's my filleting knife. Hopefully that's come out quite nice. That's gone all the way up. There's not much to see on the other side because I'm afraid it's only got gluing on one side, so you can't really see, but that's gone quite a high grind on there. And again, I've got a couple of little marks onto that. But this is going to be taken up even higher. So again, don't chase them. As long as you haven't got big gouges, because they'll take ages. If it's odd little bit of a smiley or an odd little scratch, don't worry. You know, don't chase them. They're easy to take out much easier and safer to take out after your heat treat. So I've got to this point now. So next is going to be, I've got a couple of tapered tanks to put on. I've got 2, 3 of these need tapered tanks. So I'm going to sort that in a minute. Probably fog on my tea soon. I hope it's getting late. It's wine o'clock. Oh, bad of me. Terrible bad of me. I'll cut it down a bit. But then what I'll do is, after the heat treat, I'll bring you back, and I'll keep this, and I'll bring you back, and just basically show you what I do, a few of the little things, and how you can clean things up after heat treat.